Hello friends, I'm happy to see you here on the channel. Today, I want to tell you a story about a city that almost feels impossible. Imagine a huge modern megacity with skyscrapers, beaches, highways, and millions of residents. Now imagine that this city exists almost completely alone. Welcome to Perth, the most isolated megacity on Earth. If you look at a world map, Perth seems as if someone accidentally left it on the far edge of the continent. It sits on the western coast of Australia, between the endless Indian Ocean and vast deserts that stretch for thousands of kilometers. And the most surprising fact is that the nearest major city is more than 2,000 kilometers away. That distance is greater than the distance between many countries in Europe. If you decide to drive from Perth to another major Australian city, the journey can take several days. The road leads through deserts, small remote settlements, and endless open landscapes. Sometimes it feels as if civilization simply disappears. But here is the paradox. Perth is not a small remote town. It is a huge modern metropolis with more than 2 million residents. And that raises an interesting question that many travelers ask when they first learn about this place. How did such a massive city appear in such an isolated location? To answer that question, we need to travel back in time, almost 200 years. When European explorers first began settling Australia, newcomers appeared on the eastern coast of the continent. Cities like Sydney and Melbourne quickly became centres of trade and population. But in 1829, the British established a settlement on the banks of the Swan River. That settlement eventually became Perth. The first years were extremely difficult. The early settlers faced a harsh climate, limited resources, and enormous distances from other colonies. Some people even left because life there felt too challenging. But slowly things began to change. The lands surrounding Perth turned out to be rich in natural resources. Gold was discovered. Later, vast deposits of iron ore were found. By the late 19th century, a gold rush had begun. Thousands of people travelled west in search of fortune. And that was when Perth began to grow rapidly. Railways, ports, and new industries transformed the small settlement into a real city. But even as the infrastructure developed, Perth remained incredibly far from the rest of the world. Over time, this isolation shaped the personality of the city itself. The people of Perth learned to rely on themselves. They became used to living in a place surrounded by thousands of kilometers of nature. And, strangely enough, this isolation eventually became one of the city's greatest strengths. Because today, Perth is often ranked as one of the most comfortable cities in the world to live in. Which leads to another question. Why do millions of people choose to live in the most isolated megacity on Earth? And that is exactly what we will explore next. If you look at Perth from above, one thing becomes immediately clear: space. There is an incredible amount of space. Unlike many megacities around the world where buildings are packed tightly together, Perth feels open and breathable. Wide streets, large parks, long waterfronts, and endless beaches create the feeling that the city moves at its own relaxed pace. This is often the first thing visitors notice. There is no overwhelming rush of crowds, no constant pressure of dense urban life. Instead, Perth is often described as one of the calmest major cities in Australia. But despite its relaxed atmosphere, Perth remains a powerful economic centre. The secret of its prosperity lies beneath the ground. Western Australia is one of the richest regions in the world in terms of natural resources. Massive deposits of iron ore, gold, nickel, natural gas, and other minerals have turned this region into a global resource powerhouse. Many of the world's largest mining companies operate from Perth, For that reason, the city is sometimes called the resource capital of Australia. Interestingly, many people who live in Perth actually work far away from the city. Australia has a unique work system known as FIFO, fly in, fly out. Workers fly to remote mining operations in the desert where they work for several weeks. Then they fly back to Perth for time off. Some work 2 weeks in remote mines, sometimes 3. Then they spend the same amount of time at home in the city. Because of this system, Perth has a unique rhythm of life. Every week, the airport fills with workers travelling to the most remote regions of Australia. Then they return home again. But life in Perth is not only about work. One of the biggest reasons people love the city is its climate. Perth is one of the sunniest cities in the world. It receives more than 300 days of sunshine every year. Imagine that. Bright blue skies almost every day. And just 20 minutes from the city centre, you can find some of Australia's most beautiful beaches. White sand, clear waters of the Indian Ocean, surfers catching waves at sunset, and people simply enjoying life. But there is one feature that truly makes Perth unique. It's isolation. Living in a city so far from other major urban centres slowly shapes the mindset of its residents. Many locals say that Perth feels almost like an island within a continent. News from cities like Sydney or Melbourne sometimes feels distant. Even the flight between these cities takes around 4 hours. Interestingly, Perth is actually closer to some Asian capitals than to Australia's eastern cities. For example, Jakarta and Singapore are geographically closer than Sydney. That is why Perth is sometimes called Australia's gateway to Asia. Yet despite these global connections, the city still maintains a sense of calm and openness. And that is why many people who arrive here eventually decide to stay. But there is another reason that makes Perth truly special. And it has everything to do with the wild nature surrounding the city. Because just outside the urban skyline begins a completely different world. And that is what we will talk about next. For many residents, this connection to nature is one of the greatest advantages of living in Perth. After a day of work, people can drive to the ocean, surf a wave, watch the sunset over the Indian Ocean, or simply walk along long, quiet beaches. And in moments like these, it becomes clear why people stay here. Yes, the city is isolated. Yes, the nearest megacities are thousands of kilometers away. But that isolation creates something unique. Less chaos, less pressure, more space, more nature, more time to actually live. And perhaps that is the reason why Perth continues to grow. People from around the world move here to study, work, or start a new life. And many of them eventually realize that the most isolated megacity on Earth does not feel lonely at all. Because sometimes the most distant places are the ones where people finally discover something rare: peace, freedom, and the feeling of space. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story. When you stand in the centre of Perth, surrounded by modern buildings, restaurants, and offices, it is easy to forget how wild the landscape around this city truly is. But once you drive just a little outside the metropolitan area, everything begins to change. The roads stretch into vast, open plains. The landscape becomes harsher and more remote. Sometimes it feels as if civilization ends right at the horizon. Western Australia is one of the least populated regions on the planet. Huge territories remain almost completely empty, and this gives Perth a unique position. On one side, it is a modern megacity with universities, technology, and skyscrapers. On the other side, it is surrounded by some of the wildest landscapes in the world. Just a few hours away, you can find red deserts, ancient rock formations, and national parks where nature has remained almost unchanged for thousands of years. Kangaroos roam freely across open fields. Dolphins swim along the coast. And during migration seasons, whales can sometimes be seen passing along the western shoreline of Australia.